As the 2026 midterms approach, the political divide in America is no longer best described as left versus right. That framing is outdated. It misses the real story. What we are witnessing now is a collision between two very different visions of power, legitimacy, and citizenship, with a third force, MAGA, acting both as accelerant and mirror. Democrats are running to preserve institutional authority. Republicans seem to be running to restore functional governance. MAGA exists, in case you wondered, because millions of Americans believe the system stopped working a long time before either party admitted it or will admit it. The result is not just another midterm election. This is a referendum on how this country is run, who it is run for, and whether the people living with the consequences still have a meaningful say. This moment did not arrive overnight. It's a culmination of decades of policy drift, elite insulation, and a growing distance between official narratives and everyday reality. And in 2026, that distance is finally being tested. Heading into the 2026 midterms, the modern Democrat Party is not campaigning on a bold new vision. It is campaigning on continuity of authority, of institutions, of norms defined by those already in charge. So if you listen closely to Democratic messaging, and a pattern emerges. The language is heavy on values and light on outcomes. Voters are promised affordability, stability, equity, equality, and even democracy itself. But rarely are they shown evidence that existing Democrat governance has delivered those things at scale. Instead, Democrats increasingly frame politics as an emergency management exercise. Elections are no longer contests of ideas, they are battles to save democracy. Opposition is not merely wrong, but it's dangerous. Dissent is not disagreement, but disinformation. This rhetorical posture reveals a party that has grown deeply uncomfortable with persuasion. So rather than asking why voters are skeptical, Democrats often assume skepticism itself is the problem. Folks, one of the clearest signals of this shift is the party's growing emphasis on process over performance. Democrat energy is poured into electoral mechanics, redistricting fights, voter registration operations, ballot access rules, litigation strategies, and institutional leverage. Now, before you say anything, let's be clear. Every party plays procedural politics. But Democrats seem to be increasingly treating outcomes as validation in themselves, regardless of how they are achieved or what comes after. Independent redistricting commissions are praised when they benefit Democrats and attacked when they don't. Election reforms are defended as democracy enhancing, even when they entrench partisan advantage. Norms are flexible. Principles, they're situational. The message to voters is subtle, but extremely unmistakable. Trust the system and don't look too closely at the results. Democrats insist affordability is central to their 2026 agenda. housing, healthcare, energy, childcare, all framed as crises requiring more federal intervention, more subsidies, more regulations. But voters are increasingly asking an uncomfortable question. If Democrats already control so many of the institutions shaping these costs, then why are things still getting worse? We often ask that question, when we talk about the price of higher education. Well, it is not up for debate that the left or that Democrats control everything about higher education. Why is it so expensive? Blue states, blue cities dominate the list of places with the highest housing costs and the most aggressive regulation, the highest taxes, and the greatest outmigration. Energy prices rose sharply under mandates that prioritize symbolism over reliability. Healthcare remains an administrative maze that benefits middlemen while draining patients. So rather than acknowledging these failures, Democrats double down. Problems are framed as proof that not enough's being done. Never that maybe the wrong things were done. Affordability becomes a perpetual promise, never a record. You need proof? Here's the phrase, Affordable Care Act. And they'll tell you that it's not affordable because they haven't done enough. They need to do more. They need more control to make it affordable. So perhaps the most profound shift within the Democrat Party is its view of government itself. Government is no longer merely a provider of services or guarantor of rights. It is increasingly positioned as a moral authority, the final arbiter of truth, fairness, and acceptable belief. This mindset appears across policy domains, education, speech, health, energy, parenting, and even faith are increasingly subject to administrative oversight, justified by expertise and necessity. Compliance is framed as civic virtue. Resistance is framed as ignorance or malice. This is not classical liberalism. It's managerial governance, confident, insulated, and impatient with the dissent. Democrats continue to brand themselves as the party of education, but their loyalty is increasingly to institutions rather than outcomes. Teachers' unions remain politically untouchable, even as student achievement collapses. School choice is opposed not because it fails students, but because it disrupts monopolies. Parents who raise concerns about curriculum or transparency are dismissed as extremists. The assumption seems to be that systems know best and families should just adapt. This posture has alienated millions of parents who once reliably voted Democrat and now feel shut out by the decisions affecting their children. Now, on this, because this is hot right now, on immigration, Democrats have attempted a rhetorical recalibration ahead of 2026, acknowledging public frustration while resisting meaningful enforcement. Border chaos is reframed as humanitarian challenge. Enforcement is treated as a moral failure. And sovereignty is cast as suspicion. The result is policy incoherence. Because a nation without functional borders paired with with a constant moral scolding of anyone who notices the consequences. Communities absorbing the cost. Strained schools, strained hospitals, strained housing markets, and strained labor competition are told as their concerns are rooted in prejudice rather than reality. Voters are no longer persuaded by this framing. Identity politics, something that, boy, oh boy, so I have to talk about. It remains a central organizing principle of the Democratic coalition. Candidates, policies, and narratives are filtered through demographic lenses before competence or cohesion enter the conversation. Now, the party will insist that this is inclusion. Many voters experience it as fragmentation. So rather than emphasizing shared civic identity, Democrats increasingly segment the electorate into grievance categories, each promised recognition and resources. Merit becomes suspect. Neutrality becomes hostility. Unity dissolves into managed division. This strategy may mobilize activists, but it weakens the national trust. Now, folks, perhaps most troubling is this: the Democrat Party evolving relationship with free expression. In the name of combating misinformation, Democrats increasingly support content moderation regimes that blur the line between private discretion and state pressure. The assumption is clear. Some voices are too dangerous to be heard, and someone must decide which. That someone always seems to agree with Democrats. That's always us. This approach does not signal confidence, it signals fear. Fear that open debate might expose institutional weakness. All right, now, if Democrats are running to preserve authority, Republicans are running to restore functionality. This does not mean the GOP has become ideologically pure or perfectly disciplined. Far from it. It means the party has been reshaped by voter frustration and hard lessons learned from being ignored. The Republican Party heading into 2026 is less interested in theory and more interested in outcomes. Its core pitch is blunt. Things worked better when ideology was restrained and enforcement existed. Republican messaging in 2026 is grounded in lived experience. Gas prices, grocery bills, mortgage rates, crime statistics, test scores. The GOP is not apologizing for this focus. Republicans understand something Democrats often forget. Voters do not live in narratives. They live in budgets and they live in neighborhoods. This emphasis on results is why Republican messaging is often retrospective. It contrasts measurably reality rather than promised intention. And voters will respond to that. On immigration, Republicans are more unified than they've been in years. The party broadly agrees borders are not symbolic, that they're infrastructure. And what's happening in Minnesota and around the country, especially what happened Sunday when these people show up in a church, all that does is, again, make Republicans more unified than they've been in years about enforcement and in borders. A nation that cannot enforce its laws cannot maintain trust. Enforcement is not cruelty. Chaos benefits no one, especially legal immigrants. Republicans are campaigning unapologetically on border control, interior enforcement, and rule of law. They are not interested in moral theatrics. They're interested in function. All right. Republicans have also embraced this energy realism. They support domestic production because it lowers costs across the economy and stabilizes the supply. The GOP does not reject renewable outright. Of course not. It rejects the fantasy that an industrial nation can be powered by mandates and slogans. Reliability matters. Affordability matters. Working class voters understand this instinctively. And a lot of Republicans are finally speaking their language. Public safety has become one of the GOP's strongest issues. Republicans frame crime not as an abstract statistic, but as a breach of the social contract. Laws exist to protect the innocent. Consequences matter. Compassion without accountability becomes cruelty to victims. This message resonates because it aligns with, I don't know, friggin' reality. Education is another area where Republicans have gained ground by aligning with parents rather than institutions. Republicans support transparency, choice, accountability, and performance. They distinguish between teachers and systems that govern them. They reject the idea that bureaucratic loyalty matters more than student outcomes. Parents who feel dismissed by Democrats have found an ally. Republicans still speak of limited government, but the emphasis have shifted. It's less about size and more about scope and seriousness. Do fewer things. Do them competently. And please stop confusing spending with compassion. This is not some libertarian fantasy. It's governance realism. Culturally, Republicans have stopped apologizing because apologizing never works. Never. They openly defend biological reality, free speech, religious liberty, and national identity. They have concluded that clarity beats caution, especially when the alternative is endless retreat. The posture energizes voters who feel tired of being shamed for common sense. Now, Republicans are not without flaws, far from it. Message discipline remains completely uneven, chaotic even. Some candidates confuse grievance with persuasion. Fiscal restraint is promised a lot more often than is delivered. The risk of the GOP is complacency, assuming Democratic failure alone guarantees victory. And we've seen that. I'm going to run in this district because I'm a Republican and I can say that I support Trump and I'm going to win. We've seen that a couple times in Florida. And it's, yes, it's won more than it's lost, but it's still lost because voters are watching closely. Now, here's the wild card. MAGA is not a slogan anymore. It's a political force. 7 weeks coffee. Man, that's good. It persists because it names something real. The sense that the system stopped working for ordinary people and then blame them for noticing. MAGA began as a rejection of endless wars, of hollowed out industries, of sneering elites, of bureaucracies that grow regardless of results, of media that no longer pretends to be neutral. My friend, Donald Trump did not create that resentment. Did not. This is not MAGA is not Trump's movement. Donald Trump did not create the resentment, articulated it. Somebody asked me, why would I support Donald Trump? Why do I agree with him? And I said, you got it wrong. You got it exactly backwards. People support Trump because he seems to agree with them, not the other way around. So once this resentment is articulated, it can't be ignored. Frankly, and right now, Democrats need MAGA because, like I said a minute ago, they're not running on some new vision. They need MAGA because they're running against everything. So Democrats publicly condemn MAGA and privately rely on it. MAGA unifies an otherwise fractured coalition. It distracts from governance failures. It justifies emergency rhetoric and institutional pressure. Without MAGA, Democrats would be forced to explain outcomes. Republicans benefit from MAGA's energy, but struggle with its refusal to be domesticated. MAGA voters demand clarity, not calibration. And they distrust institutions instinctively. Candidates who treat MAGA as an aesthetic fail. Those who understand its substance succeed. It reminds me of the Tea Party movement. And the people who said, the Tea Party movement is run by Republicans and it's part of the Republican Party, you're wrong. Especially if you were involved and you knew that was wrong. It was just the opposite. The Tea Party movement was the beginning of what MAGA is. I'm right. Write it in the comments. I'm dead on. And it had more to do with the frustration of simply not being heard than anything else. It didn't have anything to do with Barack Obama being black and blah, 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 freaking blah. People were angry and frustrated with George Bush. But we saw in 2010, Tea Party were the Tea Party were the worker bees. Republicans benefit from MAGA's energy, like they benefited from the Tea Party energy, but struggle with its refusal to be domesticated. The Tea Party would not be domesticated. They would not be taken over by the Republican Party. They would not get in line. They would not behave. MAGA will not behave. MAGA voters demand clarity, not calibration. They can't be handled or managed. So despite the caricatures, MAGA reflects on a coherent worldview. National interest first. Sovereignty matters. Institutions have to earn trust. And cultural confidence is not hatred. And what we find is that the elites will lie when they're cornered. And this worldview persists because the conditions that created it persist. Why do people think this way? Because all the crap that caused it is still happening. So MAGA is not primarily racial, it's status-based. It is a backlash against being managed and dismissed and corrected by people insulated from consequences. And the more you dismiss it, the stronger it becomes. MAGA exists because democracy worked, not because it failed. Trump won elections because MAGA voters vote. They show up. The threat is not participation, it is elite insulation. MAGA challenges the model. That's why it frightens those who benefit from it. And the 2026 midterms are not simply about seats, it's about legitimacy. Do institutions exist to serve citizens or to manage them? Do outcomes matter or only intentions? Does dissent strengthen democracy or threaten it? I believe that Democrats argue for trust in systems and Republicans argue for trust through results. MAGA argues trust must be earned. That tension defines this era. All right. This election is not about nostalgia or fear. It's about accountability. The party that understands why MAGA exists without caricature or contempt will shape the future. The party that insists voters are the problem will keep losing their trust, even when they win elections. Reality has a way of asserting itself. In 2026, Americans are not asking for perfection. They're asking for honesty. And they're no longer willing to be told that they are wrong to notice what they live with every day. My name is Willie Lawson. This has been the Morning Report. Until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourselves. Please comment, please follow, please subscribe, please share, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye now.